In the remote steppes of Kazakhstan, a lost Bronze Age city has been found. In China, the remnants of the first imperial highway, built to move armies and empires, have been traced using modern satellite imagery. In a Czech cave used from the prehistoric to the medieval period is a stone tablet with cuneiform writing from 2,000 kilometers away. And finally, in the UK, new evidence has pushed back the date for human-controlled use of fire by over 350,000 years. These are just a few of the groundbreaking discoveries archaeologists made in the past month. Hi, I'm Rachel, and today I will be your tour guide on a journey through time exploring these latest exciting stories from around the world, having used my years of experience as an archaeologist to carefully research and put together these videos of well-sourced, interesting, accurate news about real archaeology. No pseudoscience, clickbait, or AI here. All right, everyone, let's dig in to the discoveries. We have 8 stories today in our Top Discoveries segment, presented in chronological order, starting with the one that goes the farthest back in time. Our journey begins over 400,000 years ago in rural Suffolk in England. There, researchers from the British Museum have been working for many years at the site of Barnum, which dates to the Lower Paleolithic period. They have been investigating human fire use at the site since 2013, and now they think that they have uncovered the earliest evidence of humans making fire, pushing back the date for this crucial technology by roughly 350,000 years. I had a chance in December to catch up with Nick Ashton and Rob Davis, who are co-directors of the project. Let's dig in to what they had to say.
Thank you and welcome to the channel very much, Nick and Rob. It's a pleasure to have you here. Can you please just start off by introducing yourselves and what you're doing on this project?
Hi, I'm Nick Ashton. I work at the British Museum on Paleolithic Archaeology. I co-direct the site of Barnum.
Hi, I'm Rob Davis. I also work at the British Museum. I'm a Paleolithic archaeologist, and I also been co-directing the site of Barnum.
My first question today for you is, you've obviously both mentioned the site that you're working on at Barnum. Can you give us a brief background about it and your project that you've been doing there?
I've actually been working on and off at the site since about 1989, so we had some early excavations there until 94. It's set in an old clay pit that had been used in the late 19th century, early 20th century to excavate clay to make bricks. And it was then that the first stone tools were found alongside unusual things like elephant bones and so on. So the site itself has been known about for quite a long time. And then the most recent excavations took place from 2013. And it was really from that time forth that we started to get evidence of early or potential early human use of fire.
And so in your article and when I was researching this topic, I was reading about how it can be really difficult to trace our evolution of our use of fire and importantly being able to control fire. So can you explain a little bit more about why that's so hard?
So there's a couple of kind of key issues. So the first one is just it doesn't always preserve particularly well in the archaeological record. So if you imagine a fire out in a small campfire out in an open landscape several hundred thousands of years ago, what's left of that fire, if it's only been used once, it could be a very small fire. The ash, the charcoal, that can be very easily washed away, blown away, and what you might be left with is a patch of heated sediment, so the baked clay underneath that fireplace. And then for us to find that evidence, obviously we then need that to survive through time, through big fluctuations in climate. To actually survive into the present is quite rare. Things like stone. So, in our case, we work in an area where there's lots of flints. So you get these kind of classic fire-cracked flints that you can identify, but then demonstrating that was related to humans using fire is very difficult. And that kind of moves on to the second issue, which is when you find evidence for burning, actually demonstrating the link to humans can be really difficult.
Obviously you need to be able to, like you said, demonstrate the relationship of the humans controlling the fire versus humans utilizing like a natural fire created by an environmental process, like say like lightning strike or something like that. I don't know what the most common natural process is for creating fire, but how would you how do you determine the difference between those two situations, and why is that perhaps distinction? Why is that distinction important?
The importance lies in at what point in human evolution does fire become kind of a habitual behavior? We have a lot of theory about how we understand fire is likely to have been adopted and developed by humans over a very long period of time. There must have been a period of understanding and exploiting natural fires. So there would have been, at times, in certain places, there would have been fire caused by lightning strikes. That's almost certainly the most likely cause. And there must have been a period of time where humans were able to, or opportunistically exploited those situations. But even in that situation, there would have been periods where humans had to survive without fire. You know, it's unrealistic to think that you could maintain that year round, year after year from natural sources. So there's huge benefits to be had from having fire, but for them to really become embedded as kind of part of everyday life, and for those benefits to be fully realized to the point where humans actually start to rely upon them, that really required the ability to make fire. And that's what we've been able to show at Barnum, is this kind of really early date for at least this particular group of humans making fire. And so that's kind of the key distinction, really.
Can you tell us more about this amazing discovery that you guys have made at your site?
The site itself, as I said, is situated in this old disused clay pit. What we know from previous work is that we're dealing with a small pond or watering hole with very rich fauna and flora. And it's around the edges of this pond that we get the evidence of humans, in fact, two separate human groups. And for many years we've been excavating, no real hint of fire. Other than until about 2014, when we started encountering bits of heat-shattered flint, occasionally heat-shattered artifacts on one edge of this watering hole. Again, it took several years before we discovered more evidence. A colleague of ours discovered the first bit of pyrite. And then in 2021, we discovered the first patch of heated sediment. And this is a reddened clay. There's clearly an isolated patch associated with this land surface. And it really took us several years to excavate this. And it was then that we found associated with the heated clay, or what we thought was potentially heated clay, the heat-shattered artifact and a further piece of, further tiny piece of pyrite. But also we had to do all the chemical analyses, geochemical analyses, to actually establish whether that heated sediment was indeed heated. So the first test was looking at the structure of the soil, micromorphology. That established that it wasn't a piece of bit of sediment that had washed in. It was in situ. It's actually part of that land surface. The second thing was looking at the magnetics, and this showed not only that the sediment had been heated, but there'd been repeated heating in the same place. And then we had looked at the hydrocarbons, and again we are getting a preponderance of heavy hydrocarbons which are associated with human fire use as opposed to natural burning. And then finally we used a form of infrared which established that the reddened clay had reached temperatures of over 700 degrees. So all these things pulled together showed that we almost certainly had human fire use. And then it was really the pyrite that was the clincher in terms of fire making. Iron pyrite is a natural occurring iron that can be struck against flint to produce sparks. What we had to work out was whether the pyrite, because it occurs naturally, had been brought to the site with the intention of making fire. It was just part of the background geology in that area. And fortunately for us, 36 years of fieldwork has established, not just at Barnum, but 25 other sites, that in fact pyrite is incredibly rare in the area. And therefore our interpretation is that the pyrite was brought to the site with the intention of making fire.
And so then the other part of that is obviously that you've also been able to date the site and now push back the date of our use and creation of fire by, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, 350,000 years. So that's a pretty big gap. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you determined the dating?
So the date of the site at 400,000 years ago, that's been quite well established since the work in the early 90s. And then we've got electron spin resonance dating, which also supports the 400,000 year age. And also you can use amino acids to assess the relative age. All of these support that interpretation. So the date of 400,000 is very well established. In fact, it's probably one of the best dated sites in Europe. And then we get this massive jump, and I think get this point, hand back to Rob, who can explain this huge change in the dating.
Obviously, it's the headline, or it was the headline in a lot of the coverage, the 350,000 years difference between our evidence and the previous oldest evidence. I mean, I think it's worth pointing out if there are different types of evidence. So the previous evidence came from use-wear traces on hand axes from late Middle Paleolithic sites in France, which date to about 50,000 years ago. So it was good evidence, and it was the earliest evidence of tools that could have been used for fire. Obviously, what we found is the material that is used for lighting fire. So it's slightly different. It's also true that this is a very hotly debated topic, and people have different ideas about when humans started controlling fire, but also would infer lighting of fires from some of the evidence. So I think there's probably plenty of researchers who would have assumed lighting fire at an earlier date, but we just didn't have the evidence. So what we've shown is that at this time in this place, we have humans lighting fire, which fits with a broader pattern of an increased prevalence of things that look like hearths and patches of burnt sediment and burnt materials on archaeological sites around 400,000 years ago. So it kind of fits with this broader pattern of developments in the fire evidence at this time.
And it's probably also worth pointing out that just because there now seems to be this gap between that 50,000-year-old evidence and your evidence, it also doesn't mean that, they were building fires and then they forgot how, and that it only shows up 50,000 years later. It just probably means that we haven't found the other evidence of that bridges that gap, correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question, and it's certainly something for further research. And just looking at some of the commentary from other archaeologists, following the release of our paper, that's one of the questions that's being raised. Is it the case that this is a very widespread technology at 400,000 years ago, and it just doesn't preserve very well, and we've happened to have the fortunate kind of geological preservational circumstances, and also we were excavating and using methods and working in the right place to find it, and that yes, it's actually a much more prevalent and established technology from 400,000 years ago. But or could it be something which is discovered at different times and in different places, and it's a technology that perhaps didn't always survive, perhaps it did drop out? Could also be to do with biases within the record. So do our sites, a lot of our sites might represent certain types of localities, maybe where humans are kind of hunting or undertaking butchery, perhaps resource sites where they're collecting resources. They may not be the sorts of sites where they also, these early humans were lighting fires, and the more kind of domestic settings may be underrepresented in our record.
The other interesting aspect that we need to think about, we don't necessarily have answers to, is that at some point the human gut becomes dependent on cooked food. When that happened, we don't know. But I think most scientists would argue that it happens with regular cooking, it's routine cooking. So at some point in our history, we become dependent on cooking. Whether that's 400,000 years ago or more recently, we don't know. I suspect it could be even earlier. And so I think we need to keep an open mind.
And I always like to ask people, when you're making such, like, especially a major discovery like this that generates so many headlines, etc., when you have that moment where you realize what you found, like, how did that feel? Was it like a complete surprise to you, or were you like, oh yeah, this is what I expected, etc.?
I was the one who actually found the reddened sediment. It was quite a bit of the site, and I was having a scrape around, and my instinct told me that this was potentially an amazing discovery. And so it was that moment, for me at least, where I thought, this could really be, the evidence that we've been looking for. These other hints of fire use at the site, this is the actual evidence that will take us to lead to that point.
It wasn't a single moment. It's something we've been working on for a very long time. So we, started in 2013 when we, went back to the site and started excavating in a new area, and immediately, within this ancient soil horizon, started encountering heated flints. And I was working on those distributions, those heated flints for a number of years after that, trying to see what we could do with it, and looking at the spatial patterning, and we were finding kind of there was clustering within it. So started wondering whether you had sort of referred to them as sort of ghost hearths. So the actual heated sediment was gone and the ash and charcoal obviously was gone, but perhaps the way it affected the flint within the soils may reveal where those fires were. And then really wrestling with that question of how can we determine whether this is humans using fire, which, you know, from the beginning, I think that's what our gut feeling was. So even when Nick found the heated sediment, you're thinking, okay, well, this is great, but how can we, you know, it still could be forest fire. You know, we need to convince people that this definitely is. And so, but, you know, also sort of fortunately, you know, over the last 10 years, all these different techniques are being developed for ways of kind of looking at the geochemical and physical properties of heated sediments, heated materials. And then so that provided the sort of suite of techniques that we could sort of throw at this to really demonstrate that it was humans using fire in the way that Nick described earlier. And then it was just a waiting game because obviously you have to take samples, you have to find specialists, you send them off, it takes time to come back. And then each time it came back, it sort of came back with the answer that supported the human use of fire. And so it was kind of a gradual kind of building up of the evidence and kind of thinking, yeah, it's becoming a more and more convincing case.
I think maybe the next question is, what's next for your project?
We've already said there are things that we don't know about, whether there are gaps in the record between 400,000 and 50,000 years ago. So I think the big thing is to look at the question on a broader scale, work with European colleagues. We've got several already interested in looking at the broader European evidence.
Oh, all sounds very interesting. My last question today is, where can people follow your journey or follow what you're doing with this project and see what's gonna happen next?
So we have a project website, which is PAB Project. That's short for Pathways to Ancient Britain Project. So PAB project.org. There's a whole load of materials, blogs, images, site summaries on that website, alongside other work that we've been doing as part of the overall project. So that's probably the best place to start. British Museum website as well.
Well, that's everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you both and learning about this amazing discovery.
What a groundbreaking find. This discovery made it onto the shortlist for Best Discovery of 2025. If you think it should win first, second, or third place, head on over to the vote via the link in the description.
This video is sponsored by ancientcyprus.com.
Cyprus, inhabited over 12,000 years ago in the pre-ceramic Neolithic period, boasts a long and complex archaeological history. Ancientcyprus.com is dedicated to fostering interest in Cypriot and Levantine archaeology and supporting archaeology communication. Their work encompasses a diverse array of projects, from developing articles on topics like early Bronze Age pottery to producing 2 billion pixel surface scans of ancient objects and creating extremely high-res 3D models of archaeological ceramics that allow for detailed inspection of surface damage. The organization's goal is to document the entirety of Cypriot and broader Levantine archaeology and material culture. In sponsoring this video, all they want you to do is check out their website, which is linked in the description of this video. So head there after this to learn more about ancient Cyprus. Our next discovery brings us to Catalonia in Spain, where a new experimental musical study of 12 Neolithic conch shells has proven the feasibility of their use as long-distance communication devices and rudimentary musical instruments. In Europe, shell trumpet artifacts have been found dating back over 15 to 10,000 years ago, but their frequency increases substantially in the Neolithic period. This new article examines 12 shell trumpets found from across 5 different Neolithic sites whose dates cover roughly 1,500 years. It analyzes their acoustic properties, focusing on sound pressure level, harmonic series, pitch, and the possible role of holes found in some of them. All of the trumpets are made of pink lady conch, and the apex of each shell was removed intentionally, suggesting that they were used to produce sound. Of the 12, 8 still have the capacity to emit sound. The remaining 4 are too fractured. In this new study, the authors focused on characterizing the sound qualities of each artifact, and one of the authors, who is an archaeologist, musicologist, and professional trumpet player, had the extraordinary opportunity to carefully play the original instruments under the strict supervision of museum curators and following established conservation protocols in order to prevent any damage to the artifacts. This short video that you're about to see is from one of these sessions. How cool is that to hear a sound that would have been heard by our very ancient ancestors? The experiment involved free improvisations to explore each instrument's sound resources and the performer's impressions of their qualities and playability. After recording, sound level meter data was analyzed to look at the pitch and harmonic series. As a result, the researchers concluded that the holes in 2 of the shells do not appear to have functioned as tone holes, and that the high sound intensity of the instruments indicates that they were primarily used as signaling instruments for long-distance communication. These high sound pressure levels surpass any other known prehistoric tool in acoustic power. Additionally, the authors found that the shell trumpets also had significant expressive potential for music. The best preserved specimens produced up to 3 stable notes, from which it was possible to modulate their pitch and produce melodies through techniques like bending or hand stopping. A tendency towards fundamental frequencies between 400 and 470 Hz also suggested that the size of the shells contributed to why they were selected for this purpose. From an archaeoacoustic perspective, this new data reinforced the theory that these shells played a key role in long-distance communication and, consequently, in the structuring of the prehistoric soundscape. Our next stop takes us to the steppe of Kazakhstan, where a unique late Bronze Age settlement has been recently surveyed. Occupied around 3,600 years ago, this site represents a unique settlement with planned architecture, including a central monument structure, low-density pottery scatter, and evidence for organized tin-bronze production. Its strategic position above the Irtysh River and overlooking 7 ravines has led to giving the site the name Semiyarka, which translates to 7 ravines, and suggests that it also would have served as a crossroads for trade and exchange. It was first identified in the early 2000s, and preliminary investigations suggested it covered roughly 40 hectares, with rectilinear earthworks that stretched for over a kilometer, clearly visible in satellite imagery. In 2018, a UK Kazakh team began a geophysical survey of the site. Surface collection recovered abundant quantities of late Bronze Age ceramics alongside metallurgical debris, including substantial evidence for tin-bronze production. These finds suggest that Semiyarka was likely a highly organized metallurgical center capable of controlled production, challenging assumptions about the absence of structured metal economies among semi-nomadic steppe communities. The geophysical survey also revealed architectural traces within the earthworks, indicating a structured layout. These results show substantial walls, likely of mud brick, were built along the inside edges of the earthworks and were probably domestic structures. A central structure was approximately double the size of these smaller units and may have been a central chamber or courtyard, possibly representing a centralized institution or a richer household. The scale of the earthworks is unusual, as their size and arrangement is different from other settlement patterns in the region. The survey's metallurgical samples included copper and tin ores, crucibles, slags, production debris, and finished artifacts. Technological analysis suggested that the copper and tin likely came from local deposits, probably in the Altai Mountains. Ceramic fragments representing at least 114 vessels were also found, and 85% of them were of the Aleksivka Sargari typology, suggesting that this was the primary cultural affiliation of the site's inhabitants. When it was first found, it was proposed that Semiyarka was the largest proto-city in the northern Kazakh steppes. This new work shows that the site was even larger than previously thought, perhaps even up to 140 hectares. and was likely a significant center of metallurgical production. Few such production centers have been found in this region, almost exclusively in the upland areas close to mines, which makes Semyorka the first large steppe center with on-site tin bronze production. Hopefully, further excavations assessing the architectural layout will provide further evidence for the metallurgical processes and help to give us some more context on Semyorka's role within the regional networks. Now we go to the site of the ancient city of Amastris in Turkey, where archaeologists excavating and restoring a Roman-covered walkway came across a smiling Medusa carved on its ceiling. The walkway, known as a stoa, was a public structure distinguished by towering marble Corinthian columns reaching a roughly 9 meters in height that once served as a vibrant social and commercial hub. Medusa is best known for her hair of snakes, her power to turn people into stone with just a look, and her defeat by the Greek hero Perseus. As such, she's often depicted in antiquity as a frightening figure with bared teeth, fiery eyes, and snarling lips. She typically adorned houses or shields in ancient times as a symbol of protection meant to frighten enemies. And so that means that this depiction of her instead having a smile is a first. Why is she so different? Unfortunately, this Medusa didn't come with a written explanation of why she was made this way. Very frustrating. But archaeologists think that it has to do with the city's heyday over 2,000 years ago. It was founded by Queen Amastris, who was a powerful Hellenistic ruler born into Persian nobility and educated in Greek culture. She was the niece of the Persian king Darius III, who was the one that was defeated by Alexander the Great, and later became the wife of Dionysius of Heraclea, and then after him, Lysimachus, one of Alexander the Great's successors. She established this autonomous city in the late 4th century BCE by uniting 4 coastal settlements, and it quickly became a thriving center of culture and trade along the Black Sea. Her rule is remembered for significant urban development, including fortifications, temples, and public buildings, and she was the first queen to issue coins in her own name. At its peak, Amastris was likely home to tens of thousands of people and was a thriving metropolis with a growing population and the wealth to build elaborate structures. This Medusa carving hints that this prosperity brought such happiness to the city that its people reinterpreted a classically frightening image into something much more pleasant. Or maybe the stonemason was having a laugh and decided to carve something unique that day. Without a time machine, we'll never know. Next, we head east to Shanxi province in China, where archaeologists have uncovered a remarkably well-preserved section of an ancient imperial road built more than 2,200 years ago that has been described as the ancestor of modern highways. The newly identified 13-kilometer stretch of road is part of the legendary Qin Imperial Road, a vast transportation corridor that once extended nearly 900 kilometers across northern China. Excavations revealed surprisingly advanced construction techniques, including straight-cut trenches, rammed earth slope reinforcements, compacted roadbeds, and even entire valleys filled in to maintain a direct route, corresponding to historical records of Qin engineers filling in valleys and cutting through mountains. The road's average width was 40 meters, not 40, but expanded up to 60 in some sections, wide enough for about 4 lanes of modern traffic. The road ran straight from north to south, connecting the Qin capital of Xianyang with Zhuyan on the northern border. This allowed the imperial army to rapidly deploy troops against incursions by the Xiongnu nomads, a constant threat to China's northern frontier. Historical chronicles attribute the road's construction to Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor, and say that the project took only 5 years to complete. A small auxiliary postal relay station was found nearby that was active during the Qin and Han dynasties, highlighting how the road supported not only military logistics, but also communication, governance, and trade. Ironically, after the fall of the Qin, The same road, which was designed to help them repel invaders, had the opposite effect, making it easier for hostile forces to penetrate deep into China's heartland. Over time, natural erosion, human activity, and shifting landscapes caused large portions of the highway to disappear. And although parts of it were first rediscovered in 1974, much of its route has remained a mystery. This new stretch was found by comparing historical records with modern satellite imagery, identifying faint linear features where vegetation had taken root over a former desert. Field surveys then confirmed the presence of well-preserved remains, including 9 separate trench sections that were in an unmistakable straight line. These trenches contained compacted earth layers, hardened traffic surfaces, and filled valleys, clear physical proof of what the ancient text described. More than 2 millennia later, it is a reminder that the concept of high-speed, long-distance connectivity is far older than we ever imagined. Our next discovery comes from the Boromani grasslands in Maharashtra, India, an area better known today for wildlife conservation than archaeology. Measuring roughly 15 by 15 meters, the structure consists of 15 concentric stone circles, making it the largest circular labyrinth ever found in India. It's made from small stone blocks with soil layers between the rings several centimeters thick. It bears a remarkable resemblance to labyrinths on Cretan coins from the 1st to 3rd centuries CE. It was first noticed by members of the Nature Conservation Circle, who noted the unusual stone pattern, documented the site, and alerted archaeologists. It's thought to have served as a navigational landmark for traders from the Roman Empire moving inland from India's west coast towards major commercial hubs, including the ancient city of Tyre. At this time, Roman merchants are known to have exchanged gold, wine, glassware, and gemstones for Indian spices, silk, indigo, and textiles, commodities that were highly prized in Mediterranean markets. The discovery aligns with historical records, including the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, a Greco-Roman travel guide describing trade routes linking India with the Roman world. While this example is a classical style labyrinth, the spiral at its center is distinctly Indian in style, showcasing local cultural adaptation of this foreign symbol. This find reinforces earlier evidence that this entire region was a major center of ancient international trade, and also sheds new light on the scale of said Indo-Roman trade and the sophisticated navigation system used in ancient times. Now we head to one of our very regular stops on the show, Egypt, where off the coast of the city of Alexandria, the sunken remains of an Egyptian pleasure boat have been found by underwater archaeologists. It was found just 50 meters from the Temple of Isis on the submerged island of Antirodos, one of the proposed locations of Cleopatra VII's tomb. You want to learn more about that? Check out my video on it, which was part of the great port of ancient Alexandria. The famous Greek geographer Strabo visited the city in 29 to 25 BCE and provided us with a written description of these yachts, called thalamagoi in Greek.
These vessels are luxuriously fitted out and used by the royal court for excursions. And the crowd of revellers who go down from Alexandria by the canal to the public festivals. For every day and every night is crowded with people on the boats who play the flute and dance without restraint and with extreme licentiousness.
The most well-known of these pleasure barges were gigantic floating palaces of the Ptolemies. Cleopatra VII famously used hers to show Julius Caesar the sights of Egypt in 47 BCE. It was literally the love boat. Although calling this a boat is a bit of an understatement, ancient super yacht is perhaps more apt. This particular specimen was found 7 meters deep and under 1.5 meters of sediment. The project leader, Frank Gaudio, initially thought it was 2 ships on top of one another, as the vessel's construction was so unusual. It had 28 meters of preserved timbers and originally would have been 35 meters in length with a width of around 7 meters in order to accommodate a central pavilion. It had a flat bottom hull with a hard chine or edge at the bow and a rounded turn at the stern, which would have allowed it to navigate in very shallow waters, a design which would have been essential in order to be able to sail through the canals of the city. Greek graffiti on the central carling allowed archaeologists to date its use to the first half of the 1st century CE. Its proximity to the Temple of Isis has also led the team to think that it was a ritual barge, taking part in ceremonies where a procession celebrating Isis embarked on a richly decorated vessel representing her solar barge, as she was mistress of the sea, and would go on a yearly voyage from Alexandria to the sanctuary of Osiris at Canopus. The vessel found here probably sank when the temple was destroyed in 50 CE by earthquakes and tidal waves. Research on the wreck is still in the early stages, but it promises to give us a fascinating insight into life, religion, luxury, and pleasure on the waterways of early Roman Egypt. Our last discovery of December and 2025 is one of both indeterminate date and questionable archaeological authenticity, but it was too interesting for me to not include in the video. It comes to us from Kateřinská Cave in Czechia, a site containing evidence of prehistoric ritual, artistic expression, and human presence stretching back tens of thousands of years. Archaeologists and epigraphers have been working there since 2016 and to date have documented 15 prehistoric charcoal drawings on the cave walls, which are among the oldest cave art known in Czechia. Excavations have also revealed evidence of both prehistoric and medieval occupation, including the first documented medieval counterfeiters workshop in the Moravian karst. These discoveries align well with what archaeologists expect from a sacred cave that's been used repeatedly across thousands of years. However, 2 stone tablet fragments found there do not match this narrative, I guess you could say. During renewed analysis of previously excavated soil, i.e., they were re-sifting stuff that they've already excavated, researchers uncovered an additional fragment of a stone tablet bearing cuneiform script, one of the world's oldest known writing systems. The new fragment matches 2 other slate pieces found 2 years ago, which strongly suggests they were once part of a single object. The other slate fragments are carved with figures resembling a procession of Hittite deities that is strikingly similar to reliefs found at the Hittite sanctuary of Yazili Kaya in present-day Turkey, which is over 2,000 kilometers away. Laboratory analysis of the earlier fragments suggested a geological composition that is consistent with coming from central Anatolia, which is the region associated with the Hittite Empire, around 1500 BCE. This creates a serious chronological and cultural contradiction, as at that time when the Hittite civilization was flourishing, this particular area of Europe was largely prehistoric with no known writing systems. Direct contact between these worlds, which based on current evidence, is until now been extremely unlikely. But instead of big archaeology trying to keep this all super secret to avoid upending all world order and rewriting history, the researchers have actually openly acknowledged the troubling nature of this find and have put forward 2 explanations for its presence in the cave. The first is that the tablet somehow reached the region in antiquity, probably carried through an unknown long-distance network, or was deposited as part of a ritual, which, if that is the case, challenges established models of cultural interaction in prehistoric Europe. The second option is that it is a historical hoax. This cave has been explored for over 150 years, and it's theoretically possible that an artifact brought from Anatolia during the 19th century was either intentionally or accidentally added into the cave's soil. Whether it was done as a scholarly prank, an experiment, or the artifacts are a deliberate forgery, such an act would still represent a really fascinating and interesting story. The trouble is that either of these explanations is very, very difficult to prove at present, as more evidence, or a time machine, is needed to support either conclusion. Whether the cuneiform tablet proves to be a sensational anomaly, a misunderstood intrusion, or a brilliant historical joke, it highlights an essential truth of archaeology. Not every discovery that we find provides us with answers. more often than not, they actually leave us with more questions. That's it for our top discoveries. Which one was your favorite? Do you think that the cuneiform tablet was a hoax, or is it real? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this segment, don't forget to subscribe or like the video. Now we're going to move on to current news and entertainment. Our first story in this segment, just makes me do this. Because after a very high-profile theft raised concerns about their infrastructure, a water leak has now damaged several hundred Egyptology journals and scientific documents in the Louvre's Egyptian department in Paris. The damaged items date from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, but I want to emphasize that despite what the headlines may have made you think, while they were extremely useful, they are not unique and there were no actual artifacts that were affected. The leak was caused by an accidental opening of a valve in the heating and ventilation system that led to water seeping through the ceiling of the mullion wing, where the books were stored. The HVAC system had been shut down for months and was due to be replaced in September 2026. The books are luckily not damaged beyond repair, as they will be dried, sent to a bookbinder for restoration, and then returned to the shelves. So, as you can see, it's not nearly as bad as the headline made it seem, but it's still really not a great look after the Napoleon jewelry thefts and also the news that the Louvre is now going to be raising ticket prices for non-EU visitors. It's just some really bad PR for them. And I sympathize with them, but also get it together. Lastly, in December, we got a whole boatload of Tomb Raider news. First, and most excitingly, at the Game Awards, it was announced that there will be 2 new, games in the near future. Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis comes out in May 2026 and is a reimagining of the original 1996 game aimed at tying the various eras of Lara Croft together. Then in 2027, Tomb Raider Catalyst will return to full treasure hunter mode, taking us across northern India and set in the wake of a mythical cataclysm that has unleashed ancient secrets and awakened the mysterious forces that guard them. In 2024, I actually streamed myself playing the original remastered Tomb Raider, so I will have to see if I can do any better than I did on that version on the new reimagined version. Lastly, on the same day as the Game Awards, Season 2 of the animated Tomb Raider The Legend of Lara Croft series dropped on Netflix with very little fanfare. I barely noticed it was out, and I watched the first season. I've not yet had time to watch it, so I can't really give you my impression, but it seems like this is the final season of this installment, as the franchise is now kind of switching gears to developing a live-action TV version starring Sophie Turner. All right, everyone, time to pack up our finds, hang up our shovels. That's everything for this video. Did you like it? Which discovery was your favorite? Is there anything important that I missed? Don't forget to comment, like the video, or subscribe to the channel before you leave. If you're feeling extra generous, you can give me a super thanks or go to my Ko-fi page and give me a small donation. If you like the look of my books, head to my Amazon storefront to shop my shelf, or go have a look at my Redbubble shop and get a sticker, t-shirt, hat, or mug with your favorite archaeology design that was made by myself. I hope that you come away from this video knowing that real archaeology is alive, well, and working hard every day to broaden and expand what we know about the past. Every watch, like, subscribe, and click helps my channel connect you directly to the sources of our exciting archaeological news. It shows the algorithm that people are interested in learning about real archaeology. Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious, and I hope to see you on my next adventure inside archaeology.